Hi everyone. I'm excited to be here today to talk to you about some of the miracle stories that are happening right here in our own city, in our own state, every day. My name is Tony Kausha, and the title of our show is Tony's 50,000 Coincidence Miracles. Please note, this show is not about religion, and we're not trying to change anyone's religion, and we're not trying to get you to join any religion. It's just about miracle stories. I don't know of any religion on the planet that doesn't talk about miracles. That's why religions begin, because they have something that's telling them there's really a God. But we're not going to get into that. We're going to just talk about miracles and leave the decisions about all that up to you. So we don't care what religion you are. We just want to talk about miracles. If you are an atheist, I think you'll enjoy the program as well, although I can't guarantee you'll remain an atheist very long after you hear many convincing stories, coincidence kinds of stories about miracles. You can email me your own stories if you wish. We'll try to use all we can on the show. I can't guarantee we will, depending on volume and time, but you're welcome to send your stories on to us, and we will mention them when we can. You can send them to the following email address. But please notice that if we do use your story, we won't mention your name. We'll keep you anonymous. And we suggest that in your story, when you send it to us, don't use your correct name. That way anyone listening will not be able to figure out that it was you that sent the story in. The email address you can send your stories to is very easy to remember. It consists of 2 words and 3 numbers. The first word is Tony, spelled Tony, and the second word is and, spelled A-N-D, and the numbers are 777. So once again, the name is Tony and 777 at AOL.com. Well, let us begin. Our first coincidence miracle today is about a nurse. She tells us the story of how she spent a full week taking care of a terminally ill teenage girl, and she got very attached. She explains how nurses do become very attached, especially people who are in critical condition, and so she became very attached. But she had a vacation planned already after the 7 days to go to Medjugorje, which is the new name for Yugoslavia, and she was going there because it's a place where the Blessed Virgin Mary is claimed to be appearing every day maybe every week. I'm not sure if it's every day or every week, but the Blessed Virgin Mary is claimed to appear there, and people are having miracles, experiencing miracles there who go to visit, and quite often people who go there and pray there experience miracles back home at the same time that they're over there praying. So she was going over there to experience this. She's heard about Medjugorje, Yugoslavia, for many years, I think since 1980. This has been going on since 1980. So she went there and she had a good experience, and she explained how while she was there, there was a group of people on one particular day who all agreed to pray together for all of their needs, and several of them were experiencing miracles right on the spot on that particular day in Medjugorje, Yugoslavia. And so she prayed for this terminally ill teen that she had bonded with back home, and she was concerned about her, so she added her name to the list, and she felt as if something powerful was happening because all these other people were experiencing healings, and she sensed in her being that something good was happening to this young teenager back home. So when she returned back home, unfortunately, she found out that when she got to her place of work at the hospital, that the teen had been transferred to another place, an intensive care place, and so they no longer had any knowledge of how she was doing. But she had a phone number that the family had given her while she was taking care of the young girl, and so she thought she was trying to think of how she would say anything, because she didn't know if she called, if the young teen had passed away, or if the young teen, indeed did experience a miracle or not. So she planned on what she was going to say, either or. So she called, and she didn't know who was going to pick up the phone, but she had a plan. So she dialed the number, and as God would have it, the actual teen herself answered the phone and explained to the nurse that somehow, some way, she was miraculously cured over the last week. The doctor was astonished that it happened, and the nurse was so delighted and ecstatic, and shared how she had prayed for the teen in Medjugorje. So I was deeply touched myself, because I've heard of other miracles happening in Medjugorje myself. Our next coincidence miracle, coincidentally, happens to be about another nurse who one of our listeners related to us her story. She was taking care of a 98-year-old man who was also terminally ill, coincidentally. And the man was expressing to the nurse, they got close because she was caring for him for quite a while, and nurses do get attached to terminally ill patients, as we already heard in the prior story. So they were attached, and he had shared with her his deep concerns. He did not want to die until he was sure that his wife was okay, and it troubled him greatly. And the nurse took on this pain, and she was wondering about it too, and she was praying for him, and she asked the family when they would visit how things were going. And one particular day, he shared with the nurse during the day that during the night before, he had seen a vision of angels in his room, and he had a vision of heaven and felt that he had visited heaven the night before, and he shared how wonderful it looked to him and how peaceful he felt, and again he shared how concerned he was, that he knew he was terminally ill, and he was hoping he would have his wife cared for and protected before he would dare pass away. He was really troubled about that, and now the nurse was troubled because he was having visions of heaven and angels. And nurses have often said to me, I've met a lot of nurses who talk about patients who have these visions of heaven during their final days and final hours. So she was concerned that he was feeling so badly. And then that night, about 7 p.m., she said, one of the family members arrived to visit and told the nurse, and then also told him as well, the patient as well, that the family had made arrangements and the wife was fully protected and taken care of now. There was nothing to worry about. They had plans for her well-being, and when they told the man who was 98 about it, he was delighted about it. And so the nurse was there during this meeting, and she was delighted too, because she was concerned and had bonded with the man. And the next morning when she went in, she found out from the night shift that the man had passed during the night in his sleep, very peacefully and very calmly. But the nurse was pleased to hear the whole story and thought that we'd like to know about the coincidence that he had waited and hung on to the last minute till he knew his wife was okay before he would want to pass on into heaven, even though he saw how beautiful heaven was. She was delighted that he passed very peacefully, and he knew that from the evening staff that truly was what happened. Our next coincidence miracle is about two friends who had been out at a party on Saturday night, and it was after midnight. They were driving back home, and they happened to be passing by another very close friend of theirs, passing by his home, and it was after midnight, and as they passed by his home, they saw him out on the front lawn, crouched down and holding onto his chest as if he was having a heart attack. So they pulled over to see what happened, to see if they could help. And when they pulled over, attempting to get out of the car, their car was riddled with bullets, and they later counted them. They were riddled with 9 bullets, and one of the bullets hit the driver in the arm. Both of the people in the car now panicked. They run outside. They grab their friend. They pull him into the car. They found out that he was hit in the chest. He was shot in the chest, and that's why he was holding his chest. And they rush off. Thank God nobody followed them. They get to the hospital. They're in a state of panic about their friend, and now they had also been shot at, and one of them was wounded. And they got to the hospital. They got to the emergency room. Thank God, it turns out that everybody was taken well care of. They got to the hospital in time. Their friend was shot in the chest, close to the heart, but the hospital was able to help them. The other man was healed of his arm injury. All of them were extremely grateful. Number one, that coincidentally they were passing by his house because whoever shot at the car was planning probably to shoot at him some more. There he was, crouched down on his front lawn, and the three men were cured. But they never found out who was doing these random shootings in that neighborhood on that night. Thank God that their friends survived. Our next coincidence miracle is pretty amazing to me personally, because I just discovered recently that in week number 79, which was for August 29th in the year 2021, week number 079, we talked about how two ladies had shared with us that they were purchasing things, and one lady's bill came out to $7.77, and the other lady's bill came out to $77.77, and that's in week number 79. Well, it turns out that in week number 86, which is dated for October 17th in the year 2021, there's another story of two women exactly having the same experience. So I'm telling you, and I'm glad I'm telling you, because if some of our listeners listen to these past shows and think that I made a mistake, it turns out that I had two identical experiences with two women seeing the same thing happen to them, two women who shared with us in week number 079, and another two women who shared the same thing with us in week number 086, dated October 17th in the year 2021. So I'm glad I got a chance to clarify that for anybody out there who might think we made a mistake and duplicated something. It turns out to be an amazing, brilliant coincidence miracle that God sent us two miracles exactly identical, but on different dates, week number 079 and week number 086. Our next coincidence miracle is an email we received from someone who read our book titled Tony's 50,000 Coincidence Miracles, and she wrote in and experienced how delighted she's been ever since she read about the chapter on the history of numbers and the meaning of numbers, because she's been seeing numbers practically every day now at significant times as obvious coincidences that God is speaking to her. In one particular case she emailed us about, she was driving and got cut off by a car and almost had a fatal accident, and she asked her granddaughter in the back seat to tell her what the license plate number was, and but she said, "I'll tell you the story of it later," and her daughter said, "Well, the truck's number is 777, but right now there's a car passing us with a license plate number 555. So the grandmother now shared with me the fact that during this accident she was surrounded by two holy numbers, 777 and 555. God bless you all. I'll talk to you next week.